Top 15 gemstones and crystals for wealth and abundance. Deep beneath the earth, a single crystal burns with veins of gold. So rare that one flawless specimen once fetched over $2 million at auction. Miners once called it the stone that traps light itself. But what if the key to wealth was never gold, but the light hidden inside it? Every century, a few stones rewrite what we think we know about fortune, and yet most collectors, even the wealthiest, still chase the wrong gems. Miss this story, and you might never see how true abundance was formed. Welcome to Top 15, Gemstones and Crystals for Wealth and Abundance, where myth meets geology and fortune reveals its oldest secrets. It's a map of human desire carved in stone. If this is your first time with Tops, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Not for luck, but to keep following the world's most fascinating journey through time, light, and legend. Ranked 15th, Aventurine, the stone born from an accident. In the middle of the 15th century, inside a Venetian glass workshop near the lagoon, an accident occurred. A craftsman dropped tiny fragments of copper into molten silica. When the mixture cooled, it shimmered, green, gold, alive. The workers named it Aventurine, by adventure or by chance. That mistake would later become a metaphor for how humans understood wealth itself: unpredictable, glittering, and fleeting. Centuries later, explorers found natural stones that mirrored this accidental beauty, on a quartz filled with minute inclusions of mica, hematite, or fusite. They called it Aventurine, keeping the name born from chance. Unlike emeralds or jade, it was never the currency of kings. It was the currency of hope. Across northern India, merchants tucked small pieces of aventurine beneath their cash drawers before opening their shops. In parts of Tibet, it was placed in trade chests as a charm for smooth negotiation. In Europe, goldsmiths used it to imitate emeralds in jewelry for those who could not afford the real thing. And yet, many wore it proudly, believing that imitation still carried intention. The stone's appeal was never in its price. It was in its promise. Unlike the rare gems that fueled wars or crowned empires, Aventurine existed quietly, reminding its keepers that fortune could favor the patient as much as the powerful. Geologically, Aventurine forms in metamorphic rocks, where quartz meets chrome-bearing mica. Its luster, the famous aventurescence, appears only when light strikes these inclusions at perfect angles. That subtle shimmer is what traders saw as a metaphor for luck itself, invisible until you move in the right direction. In the late 19th century, as the industrial age redefined wealth, Aventurine resurfaced in Europe's jewelry scene. It was no longer mistaken for emerald. It became the stone of modest ambition, green for growth, gold for opportunity, colors that mirrored the stock markets rising and crashing beyond the glass windows of London and Paris. Modern gemology sees Aventurine as a variety of quartz, yet in markets from Mumbai to São Paulo, it continues to sell, not because collectors desire it, but because believers need it. Online vendors list it as the entrepreneur's talisman. Feng Shui practitioners place it in the southeast corner of offices to invite abundance. And in meditation circles, it's said to harmonize emotional stability. Because perhaps wealth without calmness is only noise. But behind all these interpretations lies a silent truth. Aventurine is the story of human optimism turned into mineral form. It asks nothing more than to be noticed. A green spark reminding us that fortune often begins where control ends. If you observe its surface under sunlight, you'll see that the glitter is uneven. Some areas shine brighter than others, some remain dull. The Venetians believed this imbalance was sacred, proof that wealth could never be evenly distributed. Today, museums in Murano preserve samples of the original glass that gave Aventurine its name. Locked behind vitrives, the shards reflect not gold or currency, but craft and error. The two ingredients humanity has always used to create meaning from chance. If this stone surprises you, leave a comment below. Would you still keep a gem born from an accident, hoping it brings deliberate fortune? But opportunity fades when it isn't guided. What if sunlight itself could teach merchants how to keep it alive? Ranked 14th, Citrine, when light becomes an illusion of wealth. There was a time when gold was sacred, too sacred to touch. In ancient temples of Apollo, metal could not cross the altar. So worshippers brought a different offering, a crystal that held sunlight itself. Citrine. To the human eye, it was the closest thing to captured light. A golden quartz born not from mines of wealth, but from the heart of volcanic heat. It gleamed like molten amber, yet weighed almost nothing. It was this paradox, brilliance without burden, that made it a symbol of pure prosperity. Archaeological finds in Greece reveal amulets carved from citrine dating back to 300 BCE. They were found near merchant harbors, not royal tombs. The stone wasn't meant for kings, it was meant for those who risked their fortunes on open seas. Merchants believed citrine reflected the favor of Apollo, a divine assurance that every voyage would return with profit. The Romans later adopted it as a talisman for eloquence and persuasion, the invisible currencies of commerce. By the 17th century, Scottish warriors carried citrine on sword hilts, convinced it drew energy from sunlight into courage. And by the time it reached Brazil's riverbeds in the 19th century, it had already become the merchant stone, a name it still carries today. But the history of citrine is a study in inversion. For centuries, its brilliance was praised as nature's sunlight. Today, more than 90% of citrine sold worldwide is not natural at all. It begins life as amethyst, purple quartz, transformed through intense heat, an artificial alchemy that mimics what volcanoes once did over millennia. We learned to manufacture radiance, and in doing so, turned authenticity into illusion. Gemologists call this process enhancement. Collectors call it deception, but markets don't care, because what matters isn't the origin, but the glow. Citrine's modern appeal lies not in rarity, but recognizability. Its warm hue translates easily into advertising, feng shui symbolism, and crystal healing aesthetics. It's the color of wealth, bottled for anyone who can afford the illusion. In contemporary metaphysics, citrine is said to never need cleansing, a self-sustaining gem. That belief, whether myth or metaphor, captures why it continues to dominate the modern abundance market. It's not the most valuable, but it is the most forgiving. It tells buyers what they want to hear, that wealth once found will not fade. But even this optimism hides a reversal. The more profound truth is that citrine is one of the least durable quartz variants. Its color can fade under sunlight, the very force it was said to embody. The sun, the giver of wealth, also takes it away. In museums, genuine natural citrine, unheated, untouched, is pale, almost translucent, fragile. Its beauty is quiet, not theatrical. And yet it is that subtlety that commands the highest price among collectors. The stone that is made to look like gold sells cheaply. The one that refuses to pretend becomes priceless. If this contradiction fascinates you, leave a comment below. Is wealth still wealth if it's manufactured to look like light? But not every golden stone brings fortune. Some taught us how easily brilliance can deceive the human eye. Ranked 13th, Pyrite, when deception created wealth. It begins not with gold, but with its shadow. For centuries, miners, merchants, and dreamers chased this metallic shimmer through mountains and rivers, believing they had found fortune. But they were wrong. What they discovered was pyrite, the fool's gold. The irony is that the mistake lasted long enough to build empires. During the California gold rush of 1849, entire shipments of pyrite were packed, sold, and shipped to the East Coast before anyone realized they were worthless. But by then, the deception had already created movement. Men had traveled, towns had formed, railroads had been laid. In a sense, pyrite did create wealth, just not for those who dug it. Its glittering yellow metallic sheen, cubic faces, and cold weight made it nearly indistinguishable from gold to the untrained eye. Chemically, it's iron sulfide, FeS2, abundant, durable, and resistant to tarnish. It doesn't bend like gold, it shatters. Yet in the 16th century, conquistadors shipped pyrite from the Americas to Spain, believing it to be pure treasure. Those stones still sit today in royal archives, cataloged as unidentified minerals. relics of greed turned into history. In medieval Europe, pyrite was ground into powder to ignite primitive firearms. The flintlock spark that changed warfare. The irony deepens. A fake gold that helped real empires conquer continents. Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution. Chemists discovered that when heated, pyrite released sulfur dioxide, a vital component in producing sulfuric acid, the foundation of modern industry. What had once fooled miners now powered chemical plants, textile factories, and paper mills. The fool's gold became the backbone of actual wealth creation. And so the deception came full circle. Even in the 20th century, pyrite found its way into jewelry, set deliberately not as counterfeit, but as a statement. In the Art Deco era, it symbolized industrial beauty, honesty through imitation. Designers like Coco Chanel used pyrite to mock elitism, proving that imitation could be more elegant than authenticity. Geologically, pyrite forms in hydrothermal veins, sedimentary rocks, and coal seams, a byproduct of heat, pressure, and time. Where gold whispers rarity, pyrite speaks abundance. It occurs almost everywhere, from Peru to Spain, from China to Canada, a mineral democracy. Yet within that commonness lies its philosophical appeal. Not every shine must lead to fortune, and not every imitation is false. In some cultures, pyrite was still treated as sacred. In the Andes, Incan shamans polished discs of pyrite to mirror the sun, not as currency, but as reflection. To them, it wasn't fool's gold. It was the eye of the gods, capable of reflecting one's destiny. Those ancient mirrors are now kept in the American Museum of Natural History, surfaces so perfectly cut that they still cast light after 700 years. If this stone makes you question what value really means, leave a comment below. Would you rather own the illusion that inspired fortune, or the fortune that cost illusions? Still, from every deception comes clarity, and clarity found its guardian in a gem that watched without blinking. Tiger's Eye. Ranked 12th, Tiger's Eye, vision that guards fortune. Before gold, before silver, ancient warriors sought something far rarer, the power to see clearly, a gem that could imitate an eye, shimmering, alert, unblinking. They called it the Eye of the Tiger. In the deserts of the Roman frontier, soldiers carried small polished stones bound to their armor. When light crossed their surface, a golden streak seemed to move beneath it, a living ray that followed the sun. To the legionnaires, that motion was protection. To gemologists, its chatoyancy, the cat's eye effect, caused by parallel fibers of chrysotolite sealed within quartz. The stone's birth is violent. Inside metamorphic rock, iron replaces blue asbestos, fiber atom by atom, turning the blue mineral brown and gold. It is geology's slow transformation of danger into beauty, the death of one mineral creating vision in another. In Africa and South Asia, the tiger's eye became a symbol of divine watchfulness. Egyptian priests carved it in amulets for Ra, god of the sun, believing it allowed the wearer to see without being seen. Centuries later in medieval Europe, it was worn by merchants to ward off jealousy, the so-called evil eye, and to protect caravans carrying silk and spice. It was less a stone of wealth than a shield against losing it. But as trade expanded along the Indian Ocean and into Roman ports, the tiger's eye began to shift meaning. It wasn't just protection anymore, it was strategy. Merchants noticed the stone's changing sheen, a reminder that value itself changes when you shift perspective. That realization turned into a ritual. Before extensive negotiations, some would roll a tiger's eye bead between their fingers to steady thought. Focus first, fortune later. During the British colonial period, the stone was rediscovered in South Africa. By the early 1900s, tiger's eye was exported by the ton, marketed as the gentleman's talisman. Its golden bands became cufflinks, watch faces, and walking stick ornaments for the industrial elite. In an age ruled by machines, its organic shimmer symbolized instinct, a reminder that even progress needed intuition. Modern gemology classifies it as a semi-precious quartz, with modest value and wide availability. But in the metaphysical market, it's one of the most purchased stones on Earth. Collectors describe it as a battery for discipline, CEOs wear it during negotiations, and psychologists use it as an example of cognitive anchoring, how objects can reinforce focus. That may be why the tiger's eye endures while trendier crystals fade. It doesn't promise wealth through magic, but through clarity. Where pyrite glittered with false gold, this stone reflects only light that's real, and only to those who look with purpose. If this stone reminds you of focus before fortune, leave a comment. Do you believe discipline can be more potent than luck? Yet even the watchful cannot guard against the sky. For one gem didn't come from the earth at all. It fell blazing from the sun itself. Ranked 11th, Peridot, the sun's lost treasure. Long before emeralds crowned pharaohs, another green stone fell from the heavens. Ancient Egyptians believed it was born from the tears of the sun god, fragments of Ra scattered across the desert. To them, it wasn't just a gem, it was sunlight trapped in crystal. Its name was Peridot. Modern science tells a different story. The same golden-green brilliance that once symbolized divine protection can also be found in meteorites, specifically palacites, fragments of asteroids that carry olivine, the mineral form of Peridot. Some of these extraterrestrial stones are over 4.5 billion years old, older than the Earth itself. But Egypt claimed the terrestrial glory. On a small volcanic island in the Red Sea, now called Zabergad or St. John's Island, miners once worked by day and fled by night. Legends said serpents guarded the gem veins, and the island vanished under fog at dusk. Historical accounts confirm that mining began there over 3,000 years ago. The stone extracted from its basalt core shimmered olive gold under sunlight and was reserved for temple offerings. Pharaohs wore it on their chests not as an ornament, but as an invocation. Peridot was believed to absorb the sun's energy by day and radiate protection by night. High priests of Ra called it the gem of eternal return, a reminder that the sun would always rise again, and so would power. During the Crusades, many peridots from Egypt were mistaken for emeralds. The most famous, the 200-carat stone on the shrine of the Three Kings in Cologne Cathedral, was thought to be an emerald for centuries until gemologists proved otherwise. A royal misunderstanding carved into history. In the modern market, Peridot never reached the fame of emerald or sapphire. Its color, too yellow for some, too soft for others, excluded it from the luxury elite. Yet its geological identity, olivine, connects it to the deep mantle of Earth, the very substance that forms our planet's interior. Every piece of Peridot, whether fallen from a meteor or mined from the crust, carries a whisper from below or beyond. For gem traders, it became a stone of hidden wealth, affordable but cosmic in origin. Collectors prize the meteorite inclusions, a fusion of heaven and earth, a perfect metaphor for aspiration. In ritual contexts, Peridot was seen as a purifier of envy and greed, not a magnet for fortune, but a mirror for self-control. Where other stones promise abundance, this one warns against hoarding light. It teaches that wealth fades when captured and glows only when shared. Even today, on the island of Zabergad, the ancient mines remain, silent cavities in volcanic rock, empty, unreachable. The serpents are gone, the fog remains. Satellite images show faint turquoise scars where sunlight still reflects off microscopic crystals embedded in the sand. If this stone makes you wonder whether wealth should be sought or revealed, leave a comment below. Would you chase what fell from the sky if it meant losing what's beneath your feet? But while Peridot vanished into legend, another green stone rose to power. Not from the heavens, but from the hands of emperors. A gem so revered it became currency, philosophy, and law. Ranked 10th, green jade, the currency of heaven and empire. In China, wealth was never about gold. It was about balance. The emperors called it Yu, the stone of heaven. The world knows it as jade. Long before banks or currency, jade defined value. Carved into tools, seals, and ritual vessels, it represented not possession but perfection. Its translucent green surface, smooth yet unyielding, became a moral mirror. Confucius wrote that a gentleman should model himself after jade, hard yet compassionate, bright yet humble. In this stone, virtue and wealth merged into one ideology. Geologically, jade is two stones disguised as one: jadite and nephrite. Nephrite emerged first in ancient China's Xinjiang and Henan regions, a tough, interlocking mass of amphibole fibers that could survive centuries of wear. Its color was creamy, not emerald, but its durability was legendary. Only later, during the Ming and Qing dynasties, did jadite from Burma arrive, clearer, greener, and instantly coveted by emperors. Thus began one of history's most exclusive trades, the Burmese jade route, where boulders traveled through jungles, temples, and tax gates before reaching Beijing. In the Forbidden City, jade became currency and commandment. Taxes could be paid in jade. Edicts were signed with jade seals. The emperor's seal, heirloom seal of the realm, was carved from a single block of white nephrite and engraved with the inscription, "Granted by heaven to rule all under heaven." It symbolized a mandate so absolute that losing it was believed to bring dynastic collapse. In ritual burials, jade served another purpose: to preserve. Royal corpses were wrapped in thousands of jade plaques, stitched together with gold wire, believed to guard the soul against decay. Modern archaeologists have unearthed these jade suits, still gleaming after 2,000 years. To touch one is to feel a philosophy, that eternity is earned through balance, not through brilliance. Jade also shaped the economic psychology of the East. While Western empires measured wealth in metal and expansion, China measured it in harmony and endurance. The stone's resonance inspired proverbs, "Gold has value, but jade is beyond price." Even today, the jade market in Yunnan, in Hong Kong, functions not only as commodity trade, but as cultural continuation, a ritual economy where moral symbolism outweighs speculative profit. Under the microscope, a piece of imperial jade reveals fibers that cross each other like woven threads, a natural fabric of strength and flexibility. It is as if the stone itself were designed to embody the Confucian ideal of gentle firmness. That is why no other gem has maintained its moral authority for millennia. In 2025, auction houses still list imperial jade necklaces alongside diamonds and sapphires, not for their weight, but for their continuity. Each sale is an act of translation, turning virtue into value, heritage into market, and each piece carries the same quiet lesson, that true wealth requires harmony between what is seen and what is remembered. If this stone makes you question whether wealth is something to own or something to preserve, leave a comment below. Would you spend a fortune on what was once meant to teach virtue? Yet balance too long preserved turns stillness into stagnation. Then came a stone born of motion, the pulse of trade, the green of malachite. Ranked ninth, malachite, the green veins of empire. Every empire has a color that defines its ambition. For centuries, that color was green, painted on temples, traded through caravans, and mined from the bones of the earth. The story of malachite starts where most stories of fortune end, deep beneath the earth. In the copper belts of Central Africa, miners unearthed veins of a green so vivid that even in darkness, it glowed. That glow was both a curse and a blessing. The mineral was toxic to breathe, heavy to lift, but irresistible to trade. From the mines of Katanga to the caravans of the Sahara, chunks of malachite traveled across the continent long before the term Africa even existed on maps. Egyptian tombs from 4,000 years ago contained malachite eye paint, crushed and mixed with fat to line the eyes of nobles. They believed the color repelled evil spirits and reflected divine light to the gods. Every time the pigment was applied, it symbolized both power and protection, beauty as defense. As civilizations rose, malachite's meaning transformed. For the Greeks and Romans, it became a traveler's stone, believed to shatter when danger approached. In the Middle Ages, it adorned the hilts of swords and the domes of cathedrals. And by the time it reached 18th century Russia, its fate changed again. No longer pigment or ornament, it became architecture. In the imperial courts of St. Petersburg, Catherine the Great commissioned entire rooms lined with malachite. Columns, tables, even fireplaces shimmered in waves of green and black. The malachite room in the Winter Palace became a visual declaration. Wealth could now be built, It wasn't just displayed, it surrounded those who ruled. But the more profound irony is that none of that malachite came from Russia. It came from the Congo, transported through colonial supply chains that turned sacred ground into a commodity. The same stone once used to bless eyes now funds empires that looked away. Geologically, malachite forms through the slow oxidation of copper ore. It grows in concentric rings, each layer a memory of changing water and air. That's why every slice looks like rippling waves or wood grain. It is the mineral embodiment of transformation, of chemistry becoming art, of decay becoming value. Today, malachite occupies two worlds. In one, it's carved into bracelets and sculptures for tourists. In the other, it sits in museums, fossilized as evidence of global trade. Collectors admire its patterns, unaware that those rings trace the story of human movement. Mining, conquest, creation. In metaphysical circles, it's called the Stone of Transformation. Practitioners claim it absorbs negative energy and encourages change. Perhaps unknowingly, they echo its real history, a mineral that transformed from pigment to power, from dust to dynasty. But transformation has a cost. The largest malachite deposits in the Congo are now exhausted. The green that once flowed through rivers of trade is gone. Mined, sold, archived. What remains are patterns carved into stone, echoes of a world that mistook beauty for infinity. If this stone makes you think about how wealth shifts hands, from miners to monarchs to museums, leave a comment below. Who truly owns transformation? But not all wealth is carved or mined. Some were born from ancient forests, treasures that flowed like honey, trapping the past within their glow. Ranked 8th, amber, the gold of forgotten forests. Before gold, there was resin. Before currency, there was sunlight hardened by time. The ancients called it electrum, the fossil of light. We call it amber. Amber is not a stone at all. It was once the sap of prehistoric trees, flowing through forests that no longer exist. Over millions of years, pressure and heat transformed that sap into translucent honey, a gem made of memory. Every piece carries the ghost of a vanished world, a leaf, a feather, sometimes an entire insect, sealed forever in silence. The oldest known amber fields stretch from the Baltic coast to Myanmar. In these ancient deposits, sunlight became wealth. For the people of Northern Europe, amber was the gold of the North. They traded it for spices, silks, and metal along a network of routes historians later named the Amber Road, one of humanity's earliest commercial highways. Each polished bead that reached Rome, Alexandria, or Athens carried not only beauty, but geography, proof that nature could connect continents before empires could. Archaeological evidence shows that Roman patricians prized amber more than gold. Pliny the Elder wrote that a tiny figure carved in amber was worth more than a healthy slave. It wasn't just about rarity, it was about what amber represented, the perfection of stillness, the preservation of life against decay. Where other stones dazzled, this one remembered. In the temples of Greece, priests burned amber powder as incense to invoke the sun god Helios. In China's Han Dynasty, it was called the soul of the tiger and was believed to form when the animal died and its spirit returned to the earth. In medieval Europe, it became medicine, ground, swallowed, or worn against the skin to protect against plague. Through every culture, it served the same role, a silent guardian between life and time. Unlike gems mined from mountains, amber is found in the ground, on beaches or in the sea, carried by tides, not veins. When the Baltic storms hit, waves throw fragments of amber onto the shore. Locals still walk the sand after tempests, scanning for golden glints between seaweed and stones. A modern echo of an ancient instinct, searching for what the world forgot to keep. In gemology, amber is classified by its inclusions, what it traps. The more complete the life inside, the higher the price. A mosquito with its wings intact, a flower perfectly preserved, nature's own time capsule. At auctions, these pieces sell not as jewelry, but as history, fragments of the Earth's autobiography. But there is another side. In the rush to collect, entire forests in Myanmar have been stripped and excavated for amber, some containing Cretaceous-era life. Scientists warn that these fossils, once destroyed, can never be replaced. The gem that preserved time now risks erasing it. Amber has no shimmer, no metallic reflection, no crystalline perfection. Its power lies in quiet, in the soft glow of something that survived by accident. To hold it is to have silence harden into light. If this stone makes you think about what deserves to be preserved, leave a comment below. What moment in your life would you want time to trap forever? But where amber captured silence, another stone spoke in blue, a voice once used by kings, scribes, and gods to write the language of power. Ranked 7th, Lapis Lazuli, the blue voice of civilization. Before language was written on paper, it was carved in stone, and before men spoke to gods, they wore blue, the color of the heavens made solid. The ancients called it Lapis Lazuli, the stone that spoke to the gods. The story begins in the mountains of Afghanistan, in the valley of Badakhshan. There, 6,000 years ago, miners chipped veins of deep ultramarine from limestone cliffs, hauling them on foot through deserts and across empires. It is one of the oldest known trade networks in human history. From these mines, Lapis Lazuli traveled to the temples of Mesopotamia, the tombs of Egypt, and the palaces of Persia, a blue thread stitching together the first civilizations. To the Sumerians, lapis was divine flesh, the very material from which the gods were carved. Their word for it, Zagin, literally meant heaven. When priests offered it to Inanna, the goddess of love and war, they believed she wore its glow as armor. To hold lapis was to have a conversation with the divine. In Egypt, the stone reached its zenith. The eyes of the funerary mask of Tutankhamun were inlaid with lapis, not for decoration, but to ensure the pharaoh could see beyond death. Amulets, scarabs, and staffs were carved from its ultramarine heart, all meant to connect rulers with eternal life. When crushed into powder, it became ultramarine pigment, the color of celestial power. Only the high priests and the dead could wear it. Only the gods could own its glow. But centuries later, in the workshops of Renaissance Europe, that same pigment, still imported from Afghanistan, found a new language. Artists like Michelangelo, Titian, and Vermeer used powdered lapis lazuli to paint the robes of the Virgin Mary. For them, the blue symbolized divinity, purity, and truth. Its cost exceeded that of gold. A single painting could consume a year's salary of a craftsman. The stone that once belonged to the gods had now become the price of faith. Geologically, lapis lazuli is not a single mineral, but a symphony: lazurite, calcite, and pyrite. The golden flecks of pyrite shimmer like stars trapped in a twilight sky. It is both heaven and earth, compressed belief, carved into permanence. Even today, when gemologists cut lapis for jewelry, they look for that balance. Too much pyrite and it becomes greedy. Too little and it loses its voice. Perfection lies in harmony. The cosmic lesson the stone has carried for millennia. Trade routes shaped by lapis became arteries of empire. From Egypt to Venice, from Samarkand to Florence, every blue pigment in art, every royal ornament, traced its origin back to those Afghan mines. And strangely, every painter, priest, and pharaoh who used it was speaking the same silent language, a dialogue between wealth, beauty, and the divine. Today, lapis lazuli remains a symbol of knowledge and inner truth. In meditation, it is said to open the third eye. In commerce, it represents wisdom over impulse, the idea that understanding is the highest form of prosperity. It's no longer a stone of kings, but of clarity, a reminder that the voice of truth still carries value, even in noise. If this stone reminds you that true wealth is found in meaning, not possession, leave a comment. What color would your truth be? But where lapis spoke for the gods, another green gem whispered to kings, a jewel that redefined desire, faith, and fortune itself. Ranked 6th, emerald, the price of perfection. In ancient Rome, the color green meant victory. In Egypt, it meant eternal life. In South America, it meant blood, the kind spilled for beauty. All of it was the same stone, emerald, the jewel of empire and rebirth. The legend of emerald begins not in palaces, but in veins of fire. Deep within metamorphic rocks, beryllium meets chromium, a rare collision of elements that only a handful of places on Earth can host. The result? A gem that captures the essence of growth and envy in the same light. It is the paradox of life itself, fragile, fractured, and irresistible. Cleopatra understood that. She adorned herself with emeralds not merely for beauty, but for dominance. In her time, Egypt's mines at Mount Smaragdus supplied the entire Mediterranean world. The stone became her signature, her political color. Emeralds were carved with her likeness and given to Roman envoys as symbols of allegiance, not affection. In her empire, wealth wasn't just worn, it was weaponized. Centuries later, Spanish conquistadors found new veins of emerald in the Andes of Colombia, the mines of Muzo and Chivor. The indigenous Muisca people had already revered the stone for 1,000 years, calling it Esmeralda, the tear of the earth. They believed it was born when the goddess Fura wept for her lost lover. The Spaniards called it tribute, not tragedy. They melted temples, enslaved miners, and shipped the gems across oceans, turning faith into fortune. From royal treasuries in Madrid to Mughal palaces in India, the emerald's journey mirrored conquest itself. Luminous, bloody, global. Under Mughal rule, the emerald became the stone of spirituality and empire. Emperors like Shah Jahan, builder of the Taj Mahal, wore inscribed emerald talismans etched with Quranic verses. To them, it symbolized divine protection and eternal paradise. But here lies the inversion. The same stone that inspired faith also funded conquest. The gem of rebirth thrived on destruction. Geologically, emerald is among the most fragile of gemstones, riddled with inclusions, fractures, and internal gardens. Yet its flaws are what make it authentic. Gemologists even have a term for these veins and fissures: jardin, French for garden. Every emerald carries a landscape within it, as if the earth tried to preserve its own reflection. It's the perfect metaphor for human ambition, beautiful, fractured, and costly to maintain. In the 20th century, synthetic emeralds emerged, indistinguishable from natural ones to the naked eye. Lab-grown, flawless, affordable. And yet, collectors still paid fortunes for stones with cracks, flaws, and history, because perfection, once it became possible, lost its value. The imitation proved what the original had always implied, that true worth is not in clarity, but in survival. Even today, Colombia's emerald trade remains both symbol and scar. Villages built on the gem's wealth struggle under its curse: greed, cartel conflict, and environmental ruin. The gem that promised eternal life keeps resurrecting the same story: desire, conquest, collapse. If this stone makes you question whether beauty can ever exist without cost, leave a comment below. Would you still chase perfection if it meant losing what made you human? But where emerald reflected life, another stone burned with it. A gem so red it came to represent both love and war, fortune and ruin. Ranked fifth, garnet, the fire that never died. On battlefields now turned to dust, tiny red sparks still lie buried. They once adorned swords, crowns, and promises, relics of a loyalty that outlived the men who swore it. It is the gem of fire, not flame. Unlike ruby's luminous glow, garnet burns inward, a quiet ember, steady and patient. In medieval times, knights carried it into war as a charm against wounds. Some believed its color came from solidified blood. When it darkened, they said, it had absorbed pain meant for its owner. But the story of garnet begins much later than most imagine. Not in palaces, but in the graves of forgotten soldiers. Archaeologists excavating burial sites from the 5th century found brooches and sword hilts inlaid with deep red stones. Each piece belonged to warriors who fell defending kingdoms that no longer exist. To them, garnet was not a luxury, it was loyalty fossilized. Centuries before in Egypt and Sumer, garnet symbolized life after death. It was placed in tombs to guide souls through darkness, the lamp of eternity. The pharaohs believed its glow could light the underworld. Romans, on the other hand, wore garnet signet rings to seal contracts and oaths. Every mark in wax an act of trust bound by blood. By the Middle Ages, garnet traveled across the Silk Road from mines in Sri Lanka, Bohemia, and Afghanistan. Merchants traded it as both jewel and currency, small enough to hide, bright sufficient to believe in. In the Victorian era, it became the stone of devotion. Couples exchanged garnet jewelry as proof of fidelity. The same stone once used for war now swore peace. Geologically, garnet is a family, not a species. Almandine, Pyrite, Spessartine, Grossular, Uvarovite. Each type carries a different hue: blood red, orange flame, green moss, black wine. Its atomic structure is as versatile as human history itself. The same crystal, reborn in 1,000 forms. But within that diversity lies its paradox. The most coveted red garnets, the Bohemian almandines, built fortunes during the Austro-Hungarian Empire. By the late 1800s, they were exported by the ton to Britain and France, fueling a market obsessed with uniformity. Thousands of miners worked in silence to extract stones that would never bear their names. The gem of passion had become a tool of industry. In modern gemology, garnet is often overlooked, dismissed as common next to ruby or sapphire. Yet its symbolism runs deeper. It embodies endurance, love that survives, empires that collapse, fire that refuses to die. In metaphysical traditions, it is called the root stone, grounding, protective, the ember that never fades. The irony is apparent. A gem once associated with courage now decorates engagement rings. A symbol of sacrifice now signifies affection. And still, it burns. Because wealth, like fire, is not measured by how bright it shines, but by how long it endures. If this stone makes you wonder whether devotion and ambition share the same heartbeat, leave a comment below. Would you rather hold warmth that comforts or fire that consumes? But where garnet burned with loyalty, another stone ruled with clarity. A blue flame reserved not for soldiers, but for kings. Ranked fourth, ruby, the heart that burned for kings. In the Chronicles of Kings, blood and power share the same color. So did the stone they wore. In every empire from Burma to Babylon, one gem ruled above all others: the ruby. The gem that burned like desire, conquered like war, and vanished like truth. The story of ruby begins not with its discovery, but with its disappearance. In 2008, Myanmar's famed Mogok mines, once called the Valley of Rubies, began to run dry. For centuries, those hills produced stones so pure they glowed even in candlelight. Now only dust remains. The world's reddest wealth had been exhausted, not by time, but by greed. Centuries earlier, Mogok stones fueled kingdoms. Kings of Burma, Siam, and the Khmer Empire fought over the same river valleys where veins of corundum hid beneath soil. Warriors once placed rubies under their skin before battle, believing the gem would make them invincible. In their eyes, blood was not to be shed. It was to be worn. From these ancient mines, rubies traveled along the trade routes to India and Persia, then into the treasure vaults of Mughal emperors. They were carved into royal seals, thrones, and ceremonial blades, the physical embodiment of divine right. In Sanskrit, ruby was Ratnaraj, king of gems. Its presence on a crown was a symbol not just of beauty, but of dominion. But in the courts of Europe, ruby took on another role: desire. In the 13th century, it was said that the moon would darken when danger approached or when one's lover was unfaithful. Medieval nobles believed its color could fade with sin and recover with virtue. Every stone became a moral compass, every gleam a confession. Geologically, ruby is a red variety of corundum, aluminum oxide infused with chromium. That single trace element gives rise to its blood-red hue, but also makes it rare. Too much chromium, and the crystal fractures. Too little, and it dries to pink. Perfect rubies balance on a razor's edge between strength and destruction, a reflection of the empires that desired them. By the 19th century, the Mogok rubies reached Western auction houses, where monarchs and merchants competed to own pieces of the East. Each carat carried history: war, conquest, colonial exploitation. The gem of vitality became a mirror of mortality, wealth that could only exist because of loss. Even today, ruby remains among the most coveted gems on Earth, a flawless pigeon's blood. Ruby can surpass diamonds in price per carat, but the actual value of ruby lies in what it represents, the paradox of human nature, to destroy what we worship and to worship what we destroy. In a Burmese legend, the heart of the earth beats red. When it slows, rubies form in her veins, the crystallized blood of the planet itself. Perhaps that's why every culture sees the same meaning in its glow: vitality, sacrifice, love, and power, the four forces that built civilization. If this stone makes you wonder how often wealth is born from loss, leave a comment below. Would you still treasure something if you knew it was made from what once bled? But where ruby burned with passion, another gem ruled with reason, a blue flame once believed to hold the mind of kings and the wisdom of gods. Ranked third, sapphire, the flame of clarity and power. When crowns replaced swords, kings sought not strength, but clarity. And among all gems, only one mirrored the calm of heaven while holding the weight of judgment. Long before it became the jewel of monarchs, sapphire was the gem of priests. In Mesopotamia and Babylon, high priests wore blue stones as a link to the heavens, a reminder that truth, like the sky, cannot be owned. The ancient Persians believed the earth itself rested on a giant sapphire, and that its reflection gave the sky its color. Every prayer, every oath of power, began under that blue gaze. But sapphire's true ascendancy began with the kings of the Middle Ages. When crowns replaced helmets and thrones replaced battlefields, rulers sought not strength, but legitimacy. And nothing symbolized divine right better than a gem that mirrored the heavens. Sapphire became the physical embodiment of wisdom and order, the opposite of ruby's passion. The most sacred was the star sapphire, its light forming a perfect six-rayed star that seemed to move when the stone was turned. In Christian Europe, it symbolized the guiding hand of God. Popes wore sapphires in their rings to remind them of spiritual clarity, and kings used them as seals of truth, believing lies would shatter the gem. To rule with sapphire was to rule with reason. Yet beneath its serenity lies contradiction. The most famous sapphire, from Sri Lanka, Kashmir, and Myanmar, were mined under brutal colonial regimes. The same stone that represented purity was born from exploitation. Crown jewels of Europe, from the Stuart sapphire of Britain to the French royal collections, were extracted from lands far from those they adorned. The gem of virtue had become a symbol of dominion, wisdom claimed through conquest. Geologically, sapphire is a variety of corundum, the same mineral as ruby, distinguished only by the presence of iron and titanium instead of chromium. Where ruby burns, sapphire cools. It is Earth's paradox, the same structure, two opposing flames, one red, one blue. Its internal lattice is so strong it resists time itself. Only diamond surpasses it in hardness. That endurance is why it adorns watches, spacecraft sensors, and even modern phone screens. The mind of kings, now digitized, still depends on sapphire. In Eastern traditions, particularly in Hinduism and Buddhism, the blue sapphire, neelam, is both revered and feared. It is said to bring immense fortune or catastrophe, depending on the wearer's karma. Rulers and astrologers approached it with caution, a gem that could grant kingdoms or destroy them overnight. The lesson was clear: clarity can illuminate or blind. Modern collectors still treat sapphire as a stone of loyalty and intellect. When Prince Charles gave Princess Diana a blue sapphire engagement ring, it wasn't for beauty alone. It was to symbolize transparency and trust. Yet history repeated itself. Even the purest blue can fracture under human weight. Today, as auction lights reflect off century-old stones, the sapphire remains both treasure and test. A reminder that knowledge, like power, demands balance. It is the gem of visionaries and rulers alike, a crystallized philosophy that whispers, wisdom is not given, it is earned. If this stone makes you question whether clarity is a blessing or a burden, leave a comment below. Would you choose truth even if it shattered the illusion of peace? But even clarity has its limits. For kings who ruled with wisdom still craved eternity, and one stone promised to make them immortal. Rank second, diamond, the illusion of forever. For centuries, humanity searched for proof that something, anything, could last forever. What they found was a stone forged in pressure, born from darkness, and more complex than time itself. Diamond, the gem that promised eternity and taught us what eternity costs. Deep beneath the earth, more than 100 miles below the crust, carbon atoms rearrange under immense heat and pressure. Over billions of years, they transform into perfect symmetry, a crystal so strong it can cut every other substance, yet fracture under a single mistake. That contradiction, strength and fragility, is why humans fell in love with it. To possess a diamond was to have permanence. The earliest diamonds were found in India nearly 3,000 years ago, in the riverbeds of Golconda. They were not seen as ornaments, but as eyes of the gods. Sacred stones said to channel divine power. Kings carried them as talismans of protection, warriors as symbols of courage. But by the time they reached Europe, their meaning had inverted, from divine to material, from holy to transactional. The god of light had become a currency of desire. In 1477, Archduke Maximilian of Austria gave Mary of Burgundy a ring set with a single diamond, the first recorded engagement ring in history. That act reshaped culture forever. A stone once worshipped became a contract of love, a promise of possession. From that moment, diamonds no longer symbolized eternity itself, but the ownership of it. By the 19th century, new deposits in South Africa flooded the global market. De Beers, the mining giant, turned scarcity into illusion and illusion into empire. Their slogan, "A diamond is forever," was not a truth, but a marketing spell. In less than 50 years, it transformed a geological miracle into a moral myth. Diamonds were now synonymous with purity, loyalty, and eternity, yet mined in blood, greed, and silence. The harder the stone, the softer the story had to become. Geologically, diamonds are nearly indestructible, but socially they fracture easily. Behind every engagement, every display case, lies a chain of miners, dealers, cutters, and marketers, each polishing a different version of forever. Conflict diamonds funded wars in Sierra Leone and Angola. Children were sent into mines to search for love. The stone that promised eternity became the measure of exploitation that refused to die. And yet, even knowing this, humanity never stopped adoring it. We justify its shine because we see ourselves in it. The desire to be rare, to endure, to be remembered. Each facet reflects a human illusion, that permanence equals worth. But under pressure, everything cracks, even truth. In laboratories today, synthetic diamonds grow in weeks instead of millennia. They shine brighter, cleaner, and cheaper. For the first time, humans can achieve perfection without causing the earth to suffer. But the market still calls them less real. We crave not the stone, but the story, even if that story costs lives. Perhaps that is the final lesson of diamond. Eternity was never a gift from nature. It was a mirror we carved ourselves, one that blinds us with our own reflection. If this stone makes you question whether beauty can ever exist without illusion, leave a comment below. What would you choose? Truth that fades, or perfection that lies? But before the light fades entirely, one final stone remains. Not the rarest nor the richest, but the one that reminds us, even imperfection can capture eternity. In first place, gold rutilated quartz. The light trapped in stone. Some stones carry fire, some hold memory, but only one captures light and lets it live inside. Not for beauty, not for power, but as a reminder that wealth, like light, only exists when shared. This is gold rutilated quartz. At first glance, it's modest. Clear quartz with thin golden threads running through its heart. But those threads are not cracks. They are rutils, fine needles of titanium dioxide, suspended in perfect stillness, like frozen sunlight. Each one grew molecule by molecule, trapped inside the quartz as it cooled millions of years ago. Nature didn't make a mistake. It made a message. Ancient Chinese traders called it the hair of Venus, believing the golden filaments connected mortals to celestial prosperity. In their philosophy, the clearer the quartz and the brighter the threads, the purer the soul that could carry it. It wasn't worn for wealth. It was worn to remind the wealthy of responsibility. In Tibetan temples, monks used rutilated quartz in rosaries, believing each golden fiber represented a human intention, a thought, a prayer, a promise. They said the stone could not hold darkness, only transform it into reflection. Every glimmer was a lesson. Nothing, not even pain, leaves without meaning. Centuries later, during the Age of Exploration, traders brought these golden stones from Southeast Asia to Europe. Merchants called them angel's hair quartz, and jewelers saw them as curiosities. Quartz with imperfections too beautiful to discard. In a world obsessed with flawless gems, this stone whispered the opposite. Imperfection is what lets the light in. Geologically, rutilated quartz is quartz infused with rutile. Golden titanium crystals formed under intense pressure and heat. Each needle mark is a fracture healed by light. Every inclusion is proof of survival, not a flaw. Unlike diamond, it doesn't hide its scars, it celebrates them. In modern metaphysics, gold rutilated quartz is known as the wealth magnet, but not in the way of gold bars or gemstones. Its energy is said to amplify intention, turning thought into action and action into reality. The ancients believed it aligned ambition with wisdom, reminding its bearer that abundance without awareness is just repetition. Under the microscope, each golden strand catches light differently, some bright, some dim, some curved like rivers. Together, they form a constellation inside a crystal, a silent galaxy of human aspiration. No two are ever the same. No one can replicate the randomness of light, and that's the paradox of gold rutilated quartz. It's one of the most transparent stones in the world, yet it hides everything that matters: pressure, time, heat, and recovery. It's what happens when chaos becomes clarity. In auction houses, it rarely competes with diamonds or emeralds, but collectors who understand it say that while the others show what wealth looks like, this one shows what it means. Because true prosperity isn't about accumulation, it's about illumination, the kind that doesn't fade when the lights go out. If this stone makes you wonder whether wealth is something you find or something you awaken, leave a comment below. What light would you keep if you could hold it forever? 15 stones, 15 mirrors. Each one revealed a truth about the way we chase, lose, and rediscover wealth. But perhaps the greatest treasure isn't buried in the earth. It's the light we choose to carry forward. Across centuries, these stones have shaped empires, inspired merchants, and guided those who dared to dream beyond their time. Their glow reminds us that real wealth isn't what we hold, it's what we understand. If you've enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Tops, where every episode uncovers a new secret hidden beneath the surface of our world. In the next episode, we'll explore the 10 lost gemstones that vanished from history and reveal one that may still exist today. Thank you for watching Tops, where stories of the earth meet the pursuit of timeless wonder.